Hi everyone, this is Renee from Meadowlark Mystic, and I am doing a VR to the tarot tag that the lovely Sparkle Divine Tarot I saw on her channel, and it's hashtag my tarot personality. I really loved this tag. I thought it would be really fun to explore what 5 decks I would choose to kind of represent my personality. Now, these aren't my favorite decks, but these are decks that do speak to various parts of my personality. So not, my entire personality, but definitely some important parts. So let's just jump in. So the first one I chose this deck to represent, I would say my practical nature. And I've often joked with my husband that he really wants things to be both form and function, right? He really likes the way things look as well as how they perform. And I'm much more, or at least I was in the past, much more a function person. Very practical, how do things work in the real world, not into fluff at all. And so for that part of my personality, I chose the Prairie Tarot. I've talked about this tarot quite a bit on my channel, just because it kind of reflects this area that I live in. So I was just going to flip through some of the cards and just talk about it. I think that this part of my character, which is just highly practical, like how does something work right now? And if it doesn't work right now, then I don't know how interested I am in it. And this deck is a lot about hard work, about asking you, what are your goals? Why are you doing what you're doing? How is it going to work out in the long term? And I just really appreciate that about this deck. It's it's obviously not modern, but it is very kind of realistic, real world, depictions of people, not in a far away time, but in a time that can be remembered, in history. So this is a very practical deck, and I really like it. I've talked about how I'm trying to find it. One of my favorite cards. I really like the court cards in this. So this is the page, and here's the king. And these, these sticks are wands. And this guy, that's the 4. And this happy guy. Anyway, I really like this deck for how it, here. So this guy is the magician, and I think a pharmacist. This is the high priestess. Anyway, I really love this deck. And I think this, speaks to my very practical nature. Does something work? If it does, show me how it works, and then I'll be interested. The next deck speaks to my psychological nature. So this is the Hudes Tarot deck. This is out of print, but you can find some copies. This is a very, what I would say is a very almost empathic deck. It's very keyed into psychological archetypes. The cards are all very somber and thoughtful. The interpretations of the cards in the book are also very thoughtful and thought-provoking. So this is the aspect of my personality that's always looking for the underlying theme of a thought or action in myself and others. And because I'm an empath, I found that I have to be really careful about how much I peer into the experience of others, how much I give to others, what my boundaries are. And this is one of the few decks that really addresses rage, really addresses anger on a psychological level. Like here, that's the card I'm talking about. How if you let your emotions go unchecked, you'll do things that are so out of your personality, but are just under the surface. So this deck is really good at explicating things that we may not want to look at. And I really love it for that. It also speaks to that part of my personality that's fascinated with all things psychological. So that's the Hudes Tarot. And then the next, oops, of course I had to bump the camera at least one time. The next one is, I have a very quirky sense of humor. And the reason it's quirky is because although I love to laugh, I don't really like to laugh at the expense of others that much. I mean, I've gotten better at it as I've gotten older, but as a child, I thought it was terrible when jokes were dependent on someone, you know, being hurt or made fun of. So anyway, this is the Halloween Tarot. And I had no intention of getting this deck. I'm not really that into Halloween. I mean, it's a fun holiday, but I'm just not really interested. What I love about this deck is it has a really weird, funny sense of humor. Like this Wheel of Fortune card. And I love how the cat is in all of the cards. Like he's playing with a ball, a yarn ball at the bottom. And you know, the bucket's empty and they're all looking at it like, oh, anyway. This deck I find really funny. And also the cat Marseille I find really funny and really quirky. And that's a big part of my personality. I have a kind of a quirky sense of humor. A lot of times, you know, in classes or lectures, I will laugh at a point where nobody else in the class is laughing. I'll just find something funny about the way, you know, two words were put together, or it will remind me of something. And often I'm the only one laughing. So I do have a strange sense of humor, but humor is a big part of my personality. So that is my third deck, and that is the Halloween Tarot. The next one I wanted to talk a little bit about is more kind of my spiritual path. And for this one, I used the First Light Tarot. This is not a traditional tarot deck. So if you like these kind of spacey images, just know that the way she breaks up the tarot is not traditional. So anyway, I really do identify with kind of a cosmic way of looking at divinity and the forces that shape our world. And I don't think that precludes science. And so these images, which are taken from NASA's research into space, and then I would imagine recolored, they're really moving for me. And so this deck just speaks to that kind of deeper need to connect to the larger forces that are going on in our universe, and then, you know, down to our everyday life. So even though this deck is untraditional, I really do like it. It has lots of things going on. It has a number here, and that's for vibration, and then it kind of an action word at the bottom. So positive action, you know, 8 strength, telepathy, intuition, particularly with animals. Okay, so this would be a traditional, one of the more traditional cards, and it's the Hermit card for truth, and then it has guide, facts, and wisdom. I actually really do enjoy this deck, but I picked it to kind of speak to, I guess, the Sagittarian nature of my personality, always seeking kind of more knowledge. And then the last deck I wanted to talk about for my personality is the very down-to-earth but beautiful Tarot of the Four Elements. This deck is such an important part of the way I interact with the world that I inhabit. How the elements are not just inert, but they're actually alive. You know, the creative forces, the mother archetypes, patterns that you see in nature, you know, the divine fool, the hero's journey, interactions that you can have, deep contacts with different beings. I really love this deck. I think it helps me contact that part of my personality that is extremely rooted in the here and now and extremely rooted in this earth. The Tarot of the First Light, for me, is kind of the overarching patterns. I don't know if I've ever resonated with the idea that I am totally from a different, time and place, a starseed, but I do, I am very curious. So I would say my curious nature would be Tarot of the First Light, but then my kind of the structure of my personality and how I interact with my world would definitely be this very earthy deck, Tarot of the Four Elements. So those are my 5 decks. We've got the practical, the psychological, the humorous, the questing, and the deeply connected to earth energies. So I wanted to thank Sparkle Divine Tarot for this really interesting and thought-provoking tag, and I hope to see many other people participate. All right.